science work, a lot of
usual. Thank you, Srijana. I will put in the chat, as usual, the link to our Bhutan, our Global Shapers College and Career Readiness platform. And this is where we store all of the recordings and the presentations after the fact. So I will reshare that in a second. We are so lucky today to be joined by Elizabeth Lohrenz, who is the Assistant Director of International Recruitment and Enrollment at Minnesota State University. And I am super excited for this presentation. I can't wait to hear what you have to say to us and what you have to share. And so with that, I will turn it over to you, and I'm sure we will be welcoming some people in as we go, but go ahead and take it over, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Melissa. Just go ahead and share my screen here. All right. So today's presentation might be a little bit different than some presentations you may have had in the past. It is focusing on the top 8 soft skills that you need to succeed at colleges and universities in the United States. And why are we focusing on soft skills? Soft skills are so important no matter what career path, no matter what academic path you are pursuing. It's something that you are going to be using on a day-to-day basis, whether you go to university or you don't go to university. Soft skills are so important in day-to-day life. And so I'll talk a little bit more about what do soft skills mean in just a moment. But like Melissa said, my name's Elizabeth. I'm Assistant Director at Minnesota State University, Mankato. So I work primarily with our incoming undergraduate international students, as well as some graduate programs. And so I really enjoy being able to work with international students, help navigate them through the admissions and enrollment process at Minnesota State Mankato. So if you have any questions, feel free to take a screenshot of my contact information here, and I would be more than happy to get in touch with you and help answer any questions. And also you can see there's the social media links. Our International Center on campus is very, very active on social media. So if you're on Instagram or Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, even YouTube, we have a lot of content that we're regularly posting from our current students. So oftentimes students prefer to hear from other students, so you can get an idea of what it's really like to study in Minnesota. So anyway, back to soft skills and the importance of soft skills. So by definition, soft skills are a non-technical skill that relates to how you work. It's a combination of people skills, social skills, communication skills, character, and personality traits. Soft skills are oftentimes the basis and the foundation of which you use to make decisions, what you use to communicate. And no matter what program you're going into at a university level, whether it's focused on science and engineering, or it's focused on arts and humanities, or maybe social sciences, all of these programs are going to require soft skills. Whether you're doing research and you have to present that research and work in a group or a team, or whether you're working on an individual project and you need to apply for maybe grant funding with a faculty person on campus for that project, all of these soft skills are going to come in to benefit you throughout your academic program and beyond university life as well, as you develop into a young professional. So the first of the 8 top soft skills is adaptability. So adaptability is something we have all had to learn this past 2 years. I think one of the top words, at least in the US, that oftentimes came up was pivoting. So adaptability, it goes right along with learning how to pivot, learning how to quickly adjust and be able to be flexible and change in new environments and culture. There's so many different ways that being adaptable comes into day-to-day life. But at the university level, one of the things that you can do to apply adaptability is, and even while you're still in school, is to get out of your comfort zone. So oftentimes we all have our groups that we hang out with, whether it's friends or family, or maybe a club with like-minded people. It's really easy to fall into the habit of just doing the same things because it's comfortable. But I would challenge you to get out of your comfort zone. If you're currently in school, try a new club or organization. Maybe go to an event, or if you have the chance to go to a new class, try something that you're maybe not as comfortable or familiar with. Learn what it's like to be out of your normal environment and get out of your comfort zone a little bit. You can also take advantage of this by learning outside of the classroom. So I know obviously with COVID restrictions in mind, there might be limited events and opportunities at the moment, but when there are more opportunities to get involved outside the classroom, you could maybe go to certain festivals or community organizations or events. If you are interested in politics, maybe there's local political hearings or town events or councils that you could go to and sit in and listen in a meeting. Any way that you can use to get out of your normal environment and adapt to your current surroundings is a good way to practice this. The last suggestion for adaptability is find an affinity. So an affinity is kind of like a special interest, a particular interest that's personal to you. So maybe it's a hobby, maybe it's an activity that you really enjoy doing, but find whatever your affinity is when you come to the university and use that as a basis to step out of your comfort zone. Many universities and colleges have different student clubs and organizations that you can get involved in. So when you first come to a US college or university, the best way to start building your community is to join some of these student clubs and organizations and find that affinity or that special interest to you. And that, of course, will help you right away adapt to the university environment and culture, build community, and find new friends. The next soft skill tip that I would recommend is information management. So this is the ability to store, discard, and utilize information relatively quickly. This is essential when it comes to education, whether you're in high school or whether in university, or even later on in your professional career. Information management is so important. We all know this. We have so much information coming to us from all different directions, whether it's from our teachers, whether it's emails we're getting, our parents, our friends, maybe it's media or the news. There's so much information coming. And when you're in school, especially, you have so many different classes you're taking. You might be learning science courses, history courses, art courses, and it's a lot to focus on. And it's important, especially at the university level, to learn how to manage this information quickly. One of the first tips to practice this is try not to memorize subject matter from your classes. Instead of memorizing, try to make a real world connection to the concept. Try to understand the basis of the concept rather than just memorizing certain facts or certain problems. If you understand the concept, you will be able to draw back on that information and at least apply it to other scenarios. So I know that's something that's difficult to not do. Memorization, of course, is required for certain things, especially when you're studying for a test or an exam in school. So of course, there are times you have to memorize content, but really try to focus on concepts and connections to real world application rather than just memorization. When you are focusing on taking notes and studying for exams, try to mix it up. Don't just use the same study habits every single time, especially when you're preparing to come to university. Students don't all study the same way. Some maybe need to use bullet point notes in a notebook. Some might need to use flashcards. Maybe others need to watch videos such as YouTube videos or recorded lectures about the content that they're learning. Some learners might be more visual and they need to draw things out to create learning and understand concepts. So find what works best for you. At university and college, this is a really good time to experiment and figure out what is the best way that you learn and process information. And then, of course, regardless of what you're doing, whether you're going for class or you're studying for a test, it's always important to take some kind of note or sketch or drawing, whatever helps you learn best and recall information quickly and help you make those connections, learn your style. So the next tip or next soft skill to focus on is collaboration. So whether you are applying or whether you're going into an arts and humanities program, social science program, or STEM program, I guarantee whatever program you're going into, there will always be group projects that you have to work on. So collaboration is essential, learning how to, the ability to and willingness to work together in a team to accomplish a goal. So maybe you've already had the opportunity to focus on collaboration in your school, but this is such an important way to learn your leadership style, to learn how you support a group, and also to learn how to communicate information to your group. So when you are assigned to a group project, whether it's a student club or organization or a class project for an assignment, practice taking on a couple different roles. Maybe the first time that you are assigned to a group and they need kind of a group leader, volunteer to be that group leader. Even if you're maybe not confident in your leadership skills, this could be a really great way to practice getting out of your comfort zone. Then the next time that you're assigned to a group project, maybe instead of taking the leader role, take a supporting role. So maybe you're the type of person that loves to be the leader and loves to be in charge. You love taking on that challenge. So maybe to get out of your comfort zone, taking that supporting role is a way to learn how to collaborate in a different way. So try to mix it up, take different roles in a group. This is a great way to assess your strengths as well as weaknesses, whether you have a supporting role or a leadership role. It helps you understand how you communicate to a group in areas that maybe you want to grow in as an individual, but also as an academic and professional. The next soft skill is communication. Communication can be verbal communication. It can be nonverbal communication through body language and gestures and how you present yourself. It can also be written communication. But essentially, it's very important to know the different communication mediums and your style of communication, and maybe areas of communication that you really want to improve on. So some ways that you can apply communication and practice this skill or grow this soft skill is join an executive team. So I mentioned at universities and colleges, we have a lot of student organizations and clubs. Every organization on campus is required to have an executive team of at least a president, a vice president, a secretary, and a treasurer. So there's typically 4 executive team members on every student club and organization. This is pretty common from institution to institution. So one of the ways you could step out of your comfort zone and apply communication as well as collaboration is volunteer to join the executive team of a student club or organization that you have an interest in. Maybe attend a couple meetings for the first time, and then if they have a call for volunteers, be that person that raises their hand and says, yes, I want to try this. It's a great way to build your communication, and it's also a great way to build your resume by getting involved in a leadership position at a university club or organization. No matter what setting you're in, whether you're in the university or at school or at home or just in day-to-day life, it's so important to practice professional and polite communication. Being polite, being professional, this is something that transcends all different so many different countries and styles of communication. People will always respond better to individuals when you're being polite and you're being professional and respectful in how you communicate. So especially when you're going and working in group settings and group scenarios, it's so important to make sure that you're communicating well, but you're also listening well. And so that is a big part of communication, knowing when to speak and say something and knowing when to just listen to other people's perspectives and ideas. And then, of course, intercultural communication. This is focusing on being very culturally competent in how you speak and how you present yourself, especially if you're thinking of being an international student in the United States. You'll find very quickly that there's a lot of diverse populations at US universities and colleges. In most cases, most universities have representation from across the entire United States, all 50 states. And they also typically have a significant number of international students coming from so many different countries and regions of the world. This is going to be such a great way to practice intercultural communication and cultural competency when you join the university. When you are participating in your classes or your student groups, you're going to find that there's so many people who might communicate differently than you, or maybe you find that you communicate very, very differently than other people. And so it's important to understand not only how you communicate, but also try to understand how other people communicate, especially those coming from different cultural backgrounds, and how does that impact your style of communication. Ultimately, with communication, the goal is to be understood. So with intercultural communication, you can put yourself in their shoes and try to understand the background where they're coming from. Ask questions, get engaged, and try to understand, or if you don't understand something someone is saying, try to break that barrier and understand. So the next soft skill that I would encourage you to develop is leadership. So again, this goes back to some of the other soft skills I mentioned before with collaboration, but ultimately, no matter what program you're going into, eventually in your academic career or even professional career, you're going to have to take on leadership at some point, whether you're the point person for a project, whether you're the person who has to present a new idea to a team. This is such an important way to practice leadership. So it's that ability to lead a group of people. So again, I know I've mentioned this a couple times, but it is so important to get involved and join a club or organization that interests you. Even now, if you have the opportunity to do that at your school and you're not involved in a club or organization, this is such a good way to put leadership skills into practice. Even volunteering for an organization in your community, if you have that opportunity, I would encourage you to even look outside of your school for volunteer opportunities. In the United States, we also have student-led government associations at our universities and colleges. And this is such an important way, especially for international students, to get involved on campus. So I am so excited to always see when international students, especially new international students, come to Minnesota State Mankato and in their first or second year decide to run for student government. It's really important for international student voices to be heard on our campus so that they can represent the interest of international students. And one of the ways they do that is by running for student government. And that also gives them a great way to get involved in leadership and help make crucial and key decisions that impact other students' experiences at the university. So maybe you have that opportunity to even run for a student government position at your school. Maybe that's something that's outside of your comfort zone, but I would just encourage you to take that challenge if it's something you're interested in. Another unique leadership skill, especially at US institutions, is applying to be a resident advisor or an RA. Some colleges and universities also call these community advisors. But essentially what they are leaders in the student dormitories. So typically there's students who are maybe in their second or third year at the university, and they are wanting to be a dormitory leader. So they work with the university housing to manage the dormitory accommodations for all of the new incoming students that live in the dormitories. So usually they are the point person or the leader that the new students go to for information, for advice. They oftentimes have to manage and enforce the university policies within the student housing. And they take on a lot of different leadership roles through that position. There's also a lot of benefits to being an RA as well. Typically, you get discounted or free housing on university campuses. So that's a side benefit. But it's one of the practical ways that you can apply leadership skills when you're thinking of joining a university. So the next soft skill that I would encourage you to focus on is critical thinking. This is the ability to analyze, a situation objectively and evaluate an issue to form a judgment, as well as make critical decisions. So with critical thinking, it's really important to ask questions. So you want to try to absorb information that you're learning, whether it's in your classes, whether it's information you're getting from the news. It's so important to ask questions and not just take things at face value. Make sure that you fully understand the content, the context of the information you're receiving. To practice critical thinking, I would encourage you to attend lectures and speaking engagements. When you get to the university campus, you'll find that there are weekly events going on. There are so many different events going on that are free for students. Oftentimes, universities tend to be the cultural and academic hubs of a city. And so many universities will invite well-known speakers or guest lecturers who have a background in specific interest or research, and they're coming to campus to speak about particular topics. That's such an important way to get involved on campus and hear from professionals in maybe a field you're interested in, or maybe something you know nothing about, and learn new information and apply critical thinking. A next tip that might sound a little bit odd, but I would encourage, no matter which program you're going into, I would encourage every student to take a philosophy course. At US colleges and universities, most programs have a required set of courses that every student has to take, no matter which program they're going into. These are usually called general education courses or core courses, depending on the institution. They might have different names for what those classes are called, but usually it's classes that are based in liberal arts education. And one of the opportunities you have as part of liberal arts education is to take classes outside of your program. So even if you're an engineering student, you might still have to take an arts-based course or a language class, or have the opportunity to take a philosophy course. So I would encourage you to, if you have that opportunity and it fits your schedule, take a philosophy course to practice critical thinking. You might at first think, how does this apply to my program in business or my program in engineering? But I think you'll find just the way the foundations of philosophy have impacted so much our social structures in society that you'll be able to apply it to so many different areas, regardless of which program you're going into. And I'm just going to check the chat really quickly. I saw there were some questions coming in. Okay. Oops. Just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything in there that I was missing. Okay. So the next soft skill that I would encourage you to focus on in this, the last of the 8, this is creativity. So thinking outside the box and developing new ideas and new concepts and putting them into practice. So there's so many different ways to be creative. You might be a person that maybe doesn't think you're very creative because maybe you don't have visual artistic skills, or maybe you're not a musician, but creativity is not just focused on visual and performing arts. You oftentimes have to use creativity in any program that you're going into, whether you're going into engineering or the sciences. There's so much focus on just creative design, creative thinking, and you can apply so many of the other soft skills that we focused on into becoming creative. But of course, there are different ways that you can focus your creativity and develop the skill at the university. One of those ways, of course, is to take an art class. Like I mentioned, you have some flexibility in the types of classes that you take, and they can be classes outside of your program. So I would encourage you, if you're interested, take an art class, whether that's visual arts, where you're drawing or painting or learning about design, or maybe it's performing arts, a music class or a theater class. I would encourage you to also attend artistic productions at the university campus, as well as in the community. A lot of universities, because they're the cultural hubs, they oftentimes have excellent performing arts programs. They also may have special events that come to campus, whether it's a traveling theater or music group. So take advantage of those opportunities and attend some of the artistic productions that take place on campus. And then explore your creative side. People are individually creative. They're not going to be, your creativity is not going to look the same as your classmates or somebody else's. Figure out what your creative side is and what you're most interested in, and even ways that you can use your creative side to develop your academic and your professional goals. Oh, I apologize. I said that was the last one. Time management is the next one. So time management is so important when it comes to soft skills. This is going to be one of the key skills that you have to be successful as a student and eventually as a professional. So this is the process of organizing and planning how to divide your time between specific activities and obligations. I'm sure this is something you're putting into practice now as a student. Maybe you're a student who's really involved in different organizations and clubs. You're probably going through the process right now of applying to colleges or universities, as well as studying and for your classes and doing your regular homework. And all of that takes time management. When you come to the university, you'll find that the pace of classes at universities moves very, very, very quickly. So you're oftentimes having to move quickly from an assignment to another assignment to another assignment between maybe 3 to 6 different classes that you're taking each semester. So to stay organized, I would recommend using some kind of a planner. I know we're in the age of technology and everyone has a calendar on their phone and different types of apps to help with time management. In addition to those, if that's something you like using for technology, I would also recommend using a paper-based planner where you have to hand write out your schedule, the assignments that are due, the exam dates, and what you need to study for. Sometimes just seeing it all written out on a paper calendar or planner can really help you visualize the time that you have in a way that's different from something that might be on your phone. So of course, this is a recommendation. You have to find what works best for you, but that is something I would suggest. Prioritize sleep. I cannot tell you how important this is. As a student or as a former university student, I will tell you prioritizing sleep is something I did not do. And looking back, I really wish I did. I know a lot of you might be night owls and maybe your best study time is late at night, staying up past midnight. But really if that is a consistent habit you have, you'll find that not prioritizing sleep really does impact your overall performance as a student, as well as in your relationships, because you want to make sure that you have time after classes and after homework to get out and hang out with friends. So by prioritizing sleep, you'll find that you're more well rested, you're able to think more clearly and make better decisions. With time management, also, I would encourage you to talk with someone. Universities and colleges oftentimes have different tutoring centers and academic success centers where you can meet with an advisor to talk through time management skills. So they'll give you different challenges and tips of how you can better manage your time. But in addition to academic success advisors, there's also counseling centers on campus to talk about mental health. And oftentimes, so much of our mental health ties into our time management too, because the things that we think about, the things that we're focusing on mentally really impact our ability to focus on different tasks and responsibilities. And that can, take away time that you want to focus on studying because you're thinking about other internal, personal things that you might be dealing with. So really talking through those things is something that's so important and crucial to time management. So those 8 skills are the ones that I would highly recommend focusing on as a student while you're preparing for university, but also once you enroll at the university level. And there's so many different ways to apply that and practice that. Just for the last part of my presentation, before I go into any questions that students might have, I wanted to just briefly talk about my university as well as the state of Minnesota. So for many of you, you may or may not have heard about Minnesota, but we are located in the north central part of the United States. I'll show you on the slide, on this next slide, there's a large map you can see where we are in the US. So we're in the part of the United States that's considered the upper Midwest. So we border Canada to the north, and we're pretty much central to all of the US. So from Minnesota, it's about a 3 to 3.5 hour flight to the East Coast, West Coast, and the South part of the United States. So you can get anywhere in less than 3.5 hours, apart from Alaska and Hawaii. But Minnesota is just a great destination for students looking for adventure. Because we are in the north, that means that we get 4 beautiful seasons. We have a very cold climate in the winter time with lots of snow and cold weather. We're just entering into our winter right now, but we balance it out with really beautiful hot summers and absolutely gorgeous fall or autumn seasons and spring seasons. So it's definitely a place to come and experience a very different climate. Minnesota as a whole is a great destination for students. We're one of the top states for education. We have just around 50 private and public and 2-year community colleges and technical schools in the state of Minnesota. So there's a lot of ways that you can find education experience in the United States or in the state. We're also home to 17 Fortune 500 companies, which is a great benefit, especially for students who are looking for internship experiences after your program. So whether you're thinking about going into business or engineering, there's a lot of different companies and organizations, in addition to Fortune 500 companies that are headquartered in the state of Minnesota. So we've had so many of our international students go on to do internships, and in some cases even receive job offers after their graduation. And then briefly, just about Minnesota State University, Mankato. We are a public university in Minnesota. We're the second largest university in the state by student population. We enroll about 14,000 students on our campus, and we have representation from about 97 different countries around the world. Our academic programs range from A to Z or A to Z. We have everything from arts and aviation to zoology. And everything in between. So we have more than 130 bachelor degree programs, as well as 80 master's and doctoral programs. So a lot of our international students come for their bachelor degree program. They end up taking maybe 1 or 2 years or 3 years to do optional practical training for work authorization in the US. And then many times we finally come back to do their master's program later. So there's a lot of great opportunities and pathways for education. So I would encourage you, if you are interested in finding more about our academics, to do a Google search of Minnesota State Mankato, look up our academic programs, and you can find more details about that. One benefit that we have for international students is a guaranteed scholarship. So we provide a scholarship called the International Maverick Scholarship to every undergraduate international student who is accepted to the university. That scholarship is currently valued at $7,230 per year. So when you receive that scholarship, it's applied towards your tuition. Our annual tuition is around $18,000. So international students actually pay less than $11,000 per year for tuition and fees at the university, as long as you're maintaining that scholarship. So it is a 4-year scholarship. You receive it your first year, and then you can maintain that each year as long as you meet the minimum requirements, which is focused on your academics. So you do have to have good academic grades, and it's also focused on volunteering. So you need to volunteer for at least 6 different events throughout the academic year. In addition to that, we also have honors programs and undergraduate research center. There's a significant focus on our campus for students to get involved in undergraduate research, regardless of which program you're going into. So whether it's arts or social sciences or humanities or business or engineering, there is a research project or research team for you. So that has a lot of benefits as well to develop those academic soft skills that I was talking about and apply it through research. We also have many student clubs and organizations on campus to help you get involved and find community and build your academic, professional, and personal goals and skills. So that's a brief overview of Minnesota State Mankato, and that does conclude the slides for the presentation that I have for today. So I would love to take this time to help answer any questions that you have. And it can be related to this presentation. It can be related to education in the US. I'm happy to help answer any of those questions. So thank you all so much.
Yeah, we have a question. And I think it's a great question. Just one of the questions in the chat is, what are some skills that you have found in general freshmen do well and skills they find themselves caught up, like lagging? So when you welcome your international students, maybe some things from your presentation that are like, hey, check, 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 check. Versus, here are some things that maybe you could work on before. I mean,
That is
not that you can pick your favorite soft skill, but
that is a really good question. So in general, I would find, this is generalizing, for most international students, especially communication is probably one of the top ones that they struggle with. And understandably so, because they're coming in, usually their English is a second, third, or maybe fourth language that that they know. And students find themselves alone in a new environment and maybe don't have the confidence to communicate, or are faced with the cultural difference of communication. Maybe you know English really well, but you're kind of shocked by how Americans especially communicate. And so I think for international students to develop communication, first of all, is just have confidence. Don't be afraid of messing up. If you'll find, especially in the US and especially in Minnesota, people really want to understand what you have to say and hear what you have to say. So if they ask you to repeat something or ask you to clarify something, don't take that personally, like you messed up your English. We're learning how to communicate well with other individuals ourselves. And so having that confidence to communicate is something I would encourage you. And one way to also practice that right away, and this is something a lot of students struggle with, especially international students, is communicating to their professors. In US education, it's very common and very normal to meet with your professors outside of the classroom. It's encouraged, actually. And for some students, that might feel a little bit uncomfortable because there is oftentimes separation between professors and students, and you don't have that opportunity to meet with them and ask questions one-on-one. At universities, professors typically have office hours, mandatory office hours, maybe 10 to 15 office hours per week, and you can actually go meet with them and ask questions and clarification. So build those relationships with your professors, practice your communication that way, because it's really going to help you in the long term develop academically. And then I think I was just going to say too, adaptability is such an important one that I think I will say international students do better than American students, because you're already taking that initiative to get out of your comfort zone, to go to another country to study. And so that adaptability is something I see students being very, very good at.
Yeah. And I think kind of like for students who are international students who are applying to the US, like being able to say, here, like I have strengths, like I
Yes.
see myself as an adaptable person, and here's how I've shown adaptability, and I will continue to show adaptability.
Yes.
I think too, like even being like an American who went to school, I had the worst writing skills ever. Like I think nowadays, like students around the world have access to such great resources in advance, taking a free online writing course, or to build on the communication piece, like those written communication skills, and practicing learning and writing all of your papers, in the language of instruction is really important. One thing I was going to ask too is that sometimes, especially during COVID, what you've seen probably and what I've seen as a counselor is that sometimes, even during COVID or even before COVID, somebody only has one interest. Say, for example, they really love singing or music or filmmaking or playing a sport. And so I was thinking during your presentation, sometimes students think, oh, I should do a million things. Well, no. But I loved when you were saying like taking certain skills and building on something that you love and expanding. So if I love being a singer, how can I maybe volunteer and help other people in my community learn these skills? So I just wondered
Absolutely.
what you were seeing from your side, and maybe like a piece of advice with someone who feels like they haven't done enough because they only love one or two things.
My answer to that, because we get a lot of those questions, that I haven't been involved in a lot of organizations, or I don't have a special talent or skill. I like to tell students quality over quantity when it comes to their special interests and what they focus in. If you have one or two hobbies or personal interests, do those well. And exactly like Melissa was saying, if you can focus on how you can build and develop those and teach others those skills, I think you're going to feel more fulfilled in what you are doing rather than just kind of saying, this is my interest, but not expanding it in any way. So by honing in and focusing on the quality of the skills you're developing, I think that would take away from any pressure to stretch yourself too thin and get involved in too many different activities. Because that's the other flip side too. I meet students. I have a few students personally that I've worked with on campus right now where we've had to have these conversations. They're interested in everything. They want to do every club, every organization, take every class, but there's not enough hours in the day and they spread themselves too thin and they can't do anything well. So it is that balance of finding what really interests you, and having to say no to something is because you can't do it all.
And this is such a great question. And first of all, thank you so much for sharing more about the university and just the affordability and that scholarship. I put the link in the chat because I think combined with an opportunity to work on campus or have the resident advisor position, like this becomes a really affordable education, I think, for a lot of interested students. So thank you for sharing that. And then also just kind of related questions, but do you have a separate orientation for international students or a way to bring them together to meet each other? And then might they have like a host family or some sort of resource once they get there?
Yeah, great question. We do have a separate international student orientation. We have 2 orientations per year because we have 2 intakes. So it always takes place the week before classes begin in August and in January. And we really emphasize international students to arrive as early as possible for the orientation, because that's the best time that they have to build community from day one. They're there with all the other new international students facing similar challenges, facing similar cultural adjustments, and even just the excitement and the nerves and everything that goes with starting university in a new country. So you get to go through that together and build your community and find your people from day one. So international student orientation is a great way to do that. And then I apologize, you had a second part of that question and I just blanked on what it was.
Have like once students get there, like maybe like a host family or like maybe like a center on campus or a place where they can continue that like feeling of home and, you know, home away from home.
We do. So we have a student organization on campus. It's led by community members from the Mankato community, but they work with our campus students through an organization called Bridges. So it's to bridge the international students with the local community. And they actually partner with families in the Mankato community to find host families for international students. It's not a host family where you live with those individuals, but rather it's like a community host partner where they will do different activities with you. So they'll kind of take you around the city, give you a tour, maybe take you to some different events that are going on in Mankato or the surrounding area, invite you into their home for a dinner. So that's been one of the best experiences students have had with that host relationship. But then we also have a lot of different student clubs and organizations. Some are focused on different cultural groups. So for example, we have like the Student Association of India, we have the Nepalese student community, we have the African Student Association. And so a lot of these international students have created the groups and anyone can join, whether you're from that country or that region or not, anyone can join, but they use that as a way to showcase culture, their home culture to the Mankato community. And also they come alongside new students and they kind of mentor them and bring them into their group and, you know, show them the way of, you know, navigating life in Minnesota.
We need a Bhutanese student society.
We do need a Bhutanese student. And I will actually say, I was really excited about this presentation. This is the first time I've been able to present to Bhutanese students.
I
We
know.
have not had a Bhutanese
Yeah.
student on our campus to date. So if you decide to apply, you could be the first Bhutanese student to study at Mankato.
That would be amazing. And this is like a quick follow-up question because if I'm from Bhutan and I have to fly all the way and I get to Minneapolis, will someone be able to pick me up at the airport and give me a ride when I need to go home? That's really important.
Yes, that is really important. So what we do is at the MSP, the Minneapolis St. Paul International Airport, we have greeters, either student or staff greeters that are at the International Baggage Claim. It's a big Minnesota booth, so you can't miss it when you're there. And so we do that the week before orientation and the week of orientation for any late arrivals. So when you get to the airport, you'll find people from Minnesota State Mankato. And then we have a bus that actually takes you straight from the airport directly to the university campus. And so I know it's a long journey, but it's very, very easy to get to campus once you're in Minnesota, and we help guide you through that process.
What is it's a big international airport hub. So
It
hopefully
is.
travel path, I assume Bangkok would be in there somewhere, but
I would say, yeah, probably Bangkok. Oh, I mean, yeah, depending on which airline you fly, you could go through Japan. Even we have direct flights from Tokyo. So sometimes students will come
yeah.
that route, but yeah.
I think we have time for one last question, and it was just related to that. How has COVID impacted these arrangements? So, Tammy, do you mean just like all of the arrangements for students coming from international locations, or just like in particular, maybe the host families? I just want to make sure I don't know, or Elizabeth, maybe the
I can
question.
talk about it in general. So I'll talk about admissions and enrollment and academics. So the whole COVID-19 package. For enrollment or for admissions, we have gone test optional. So we do not require the SAT or ACT. It's been very common for a lot of universities. And then just saw How I Met Your Mother reference. That makes me happy. Yes. Marshall's from Minnesota from How I Met Your Mother. Anyway, COVID-19. So we are test optional. We've also started accepting the Duolingo English test, which has helped tremendously for so many international students who need to show English proficiency, but can't physically go to an IELTS or TOEFL testing center. So Duolingo English test, if you're not familiar, you can take that test from home as long as you have a good Wi-Fi connection, and we'll accept that for English proficiency. For enrollment, once you're planning to come to Mankato and travel, the current US travel requirements, and of course this can change at any time, the current requirement is to have an approved vaccine. So either a CDC approved or WHO approved vaccine, one of those on the list, be fully vaccinated at least 14 days before travel. And then you do have to show a negative COVID test 1 day before travel. That just changed yesterday. It used to be 3 days before travel. Now it's 1 day before travel showing that negative COVID test. And you can also, if you are not vaccinated, you can show that you have recovered from COVID-19 within the last 6 months. So proof of recovery is also accepted. On our campus, we, at this time, you'll have to be vaccinated to enter the US. Vaccines are not required on campus as of right now. They're highly encouraged. 95% of our student, staff, and faculty are vaccinated. For the small population that's not vaccinated, they do have to do weekly COVID-19 testing. So that is a requirement. And then for our everyday requirements, you're required to wear masks on campus. And we do have accommodations. A lot of our class structures for students have switched to a hybrid format. So most of our lectures that are in person are also streamed online through Zoom. So you have the option, if you cannot physically come to campus because you're sick or maybe quarantined, you have the option to still continue your courses online. So a lot of our faculty and professors have been so flexible to work with students during this time. So I hope that kind of helps answer your question.
That's really
but
helpful.
We're open.
Yeah. That's really helpful. And also just thank you for pointing out no SAT, no ACT, no Duolingo. Like I guess, kind of the positive impact of being able to figure these things out online. And like, thanks for being flexible. And then luckily Bhutan has had a pretty high vaccination rate, so that's good.
Good.
Okay, so if last questions, if anybody has any more, you can unmute, you can ask. I think I'm so excited. We have 10 people here, which is awesome. I hope that everyone found this useful. We will be taking a little presentation break until after the first of the year. And I guess I'm up next with a presentation on the UK and the Netherlands in January. So watch all of our social media for that. I'll just pause for a second if anyone has any questions. This is so fun. I learned so much today. I love this. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Melissa, and Shrijani for coordinating this. I really appreciate it. It's been great to have my first presentation with Bhutanese students. So thank you all for being here as well.
Thank you.
We will be posting this on our social media on YouTube. So the recorded call will be there on social media if anybody would like to go back and refer and see what they have to catch up on. And that's about it from me. Thank you so much. But before that, I would like to stop the call recording.